Welcome to On the Go with SELACO, the podcast where we introduce tips and techniques for job seekers in Southeast LA. Enjoy the episode.
Greetings, listening world, and welcome to On the Go with SELACO, and today's episode, Networking for Introverts, where your hosts, Margene Clements and Tammy Ferranti Lansdowne, hope to have a fun-filled but profound conversation that will help all job seekers in their search for that ideal job, as well as for their professional success. Tammy, what led you to want to discuss this topic with our listeners?
Well, I have found from my 10 years of conducting job search workshops that one of the most uncomfortable things people can do while looking for a job is to network with other people. There are many of us who would like to avoid networking because it can feel so awkward, especially for introverts like myself. I often feel that I'm intruding or that the person doesn't really want to talk to me. But I also realize that if I do not network or socialize, I might miss out on critical advice, feedback, mentorship, and essential growth, as well as building a community of support. Not to mention creating partnerships that enhance our organization or connections that might be needed for that next job.
You know, Tammy, you're in great company. According to research, as many as 50% of Americans are introverts.
Wow.
I know that was pretty astounding information. And did you know that introverts are more effective leaders and more adaptable in the workplace than extroverts? I say that just to make us feel better.
That's great.
But I know you're saying, well, how does that help me while I'm hugging the wall at a conference or a cocktail reception?
That's just it. You know, I realize that networking is a necessary, important social skill, but knowing that does not make it any easier. One approach I'm very comfortable with is to volunteer my time to help someone do something. For instance, I might find that they are having an event that I can offer to create a flyer for, or even ask if I can share their event on my social media like LinkedIn or Instagram. When I was playing music in bands many years ago, my husband and I would volunteer to work the merchandising table for these local music festivals and sell t-shirts, stickers, and CDs for the various bands. The benefit was that I had an opportunity to build relationships with other musicians and grow my network. People remembered us because we were helpful and supportive. We met people from small music magazines, recording engineers, managers, and other musicians, sometimes from around the world.
I can completely relate to what you're saying. I think for people who are introverts, when you're volunteering to do something or when you're the person that's in charge, you just have you feel like you have a little bit more control.
Exactly.
Yes. And it just, and it makes it easier for you to have a conversation with somebody, talk with somebody, because you're kind of in charge, you know, of everything.
And you're contributing. It makes you feel better.
Right. You're doing several things at one time, and it just makes it more comfortable for you. I realize that a lot of people won't believe it, but I am actually an introvert.
You?
Me. Because of my job, though, and because I don't want to sit at home all the time, I have learned to force myself or psych myself up for social situations. Those who have studied introverts and networking and done some research on how the two work together and have suggestions for networking for introverts call this adjusting your mindset. I kind of like that phrase.
Yeah.
What they suggest is altering your approach, that you focus on the goal of the networking. Why are you doing it? That you make a couple of connections at a networking event and then feel free to leave. Because if you stay too long or work too hard at it, you might get burnt out and then struggle even harder the next time you have to go to an event.
True.
Tammy, what do you find helpful in overcoming those networking jitters?
Yeah, you know, one thing I personally like to do, bring a friend or a coworker with me to networking events for several reasons. One being that they can help keep me accountable. If I'm not working the room, you know, they'll probably notice and say something to me later. If we both separate and meet people on our own, we can enjoy sharing information with each other after the event. But we should probably make sure ahead of time that we have an agreement that once we get there, we're going to go both our separate ways.
Right. I think that's really helpful because sometimes you go with somebody that you know really well, and then you kind of end up sticking together and talking together and having a great time, but you're not fulfilling your purpose for being there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you get out there, it gets a little bit easier, but that first moment, it's like, oh boy.
Okay, let's just stick together. I don't want to do this.
Right.
I know you and we can have fun. What are some other techniques you might use at a networking event?
Another thing I find helpful is to just focus on the other person. Introduce yourself, shake hands, and then start asking questions. Prepare questions ahead of time so that you can keep the conversation rolling. People love to talk about themselves because it is easy to do, and people usually love to have someone who is interested in listening to them. So if you are shy or introverted, just ask questions. Some examples might include, so, what do you do for a living? How did you get into your line of work? What do you like and what are some of your challenges? What do you enjoy when you are not at work? While listening to their answers, try to find things you have in common or think of other questions you might want to ask. Be interested in learning of ways how you can help them. I find that networking is not about myself, it's really about the other person. When you go in with an attitude of sharing information or helping other people, it doesn't seem like you are just there for your own benefit.
You are so right, Tammy. Such good information and advice for anyone who's networking, whether you're shy or you love networking. That is just absolutely spot-on advice. It's always a good idea to keep the focus on the other person. Networking is about building relationships, not selling yourself. And if you are someone who doesn't like to talk, lots of other people do. So let the other person do most of the talking.
Right.
That gets you off the hook, so to speak.
Yes.
Tammy, there are a lot of recommendations to plan ahead, create an agenda, or a goal for the evening. What do you think?
Even though you need to be interested in other people, practice your elevator pitch. Knowing how you are going to introduce yourself ahead of time can really take the pressure off when you're on the spot. Eventually, the questions are going to come back. So tell people what you want them to know about you. Make it as interesting as you can so people remember you.
What are some other tips that you can suggest that you add to all the suggestions you've already had? It just seems like you've shared a lot, but I know there's more.
Oh, there's a lot. I also believe with enough practice, it might even be fun. Yes, for introverts too.
Yeah, yes. But Tammy, how do you do that? How do you practice when you look at it as something scary and that you don't want to do?
Well, even though it might seem hard at first, just attend as many networking events as possible. Every time you go to an event, you will start to feel more and more comfortable, and it will be less stressful. One way to practice is in a safe environment. The holidays are coming up, and this time of year can offer a perfect way to get to know new people. You may get invited to dinner, or to a holiday party, or better yet, create your own get-together and ask your friends to bring a friend or two with them. Think of the conversations you can have about shopping, food, traveling, vacation, family, and entertainment. You might meet someone who loves the Nutcracker as much as you do.
Me.
Yes. The more people you know and who know you, the bigger your network. As you practice in this safe or safer environment, you will gain the confidence to network in other social or business situations. Remember, it is about building relationships, not about selling yourself or collecting cards.
Well, now that we've learned how to adjust our mindset, set goals for the networking event, focus on others, yet be able to share our passion, how do we strategically exit?
Yes. I had a person in a workshop this month ask me a question about networking. They wanted to know, how do you end the conversation when someone is monopolizing all of your time? They're getting stuck what I call the taffy pull. It's when you keep trying to end the conversation and move on, but the person keeps pulling you right back in much the way two people might pull taffy. Do you know of ways to handle this kind of situation?
Well, it is a tough one. And I just had a thought. if someone is pulling us in, maybe we don't even want to exit. I don't know.
That's an idea.
You might want to think about that. We hadn't thought about that before, but it just occurred to me, well, if somebody's trying to pull me in and they're talking and they're telling me things or asking me questions, maybe I don't want to get away.
That's true.
But maybe I really do need to get away. So one suggestion would be to ask them, the person, if they'd like to continue the conversation at another time at, some other place, and hand them your business card and say, contact me and maybe we can go have coffee sometime and continue this conversation. I would really like that. I've even gone so far as to say, I'm sorry, I would love to talk with you forever, but I see that so-and-so just became available and I need to go meet with them. You can also excuse yourself to get some food. And that person will find someone else to talk to probably once you leave the conversation.
Right.
Any other thoughts on this subject of the taffy pull? It can be a excuse the pun or no pun, a sticky one.
Yes, a sticky one. I just remembered a tactic I have used and another good reason to go to networking events with a friend. We may have a subtle hand signal that lets a partner know that you need rescuing. For instance, if I get stuck in a taffy pull, it gives my partner a good reason to move around the room, and it allows me to leave my conversation politely. My friend might come over and say something like, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to butt in like this. My name is Bob, and you are?" And after a very brief introduction, a handshake, my friend might say to me, "Tammy, there's someone I want to introduce you to." That would be my cue to ask for the other person's card and then politely move on.
Some great advice. This has been really fun, but it does conclude our conversation about networking for introverts. We hope it's been helpful and that you are raring to go out and network for that next job offer or to grow your professional image. Remember, you can also attend the Job Search Road Trip at SELACO WIB for more tips and techniques for your job search. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll listen to our follow-up episode, How to Work a Room.
Thank you for listening to On the Go with SELACO. If you've enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. You can also download our app, available for free on Google Play and the Mac App Store. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.